Hello everybody, this is Mark Greenawalt, and I'm setting off on a brand new mission. You are witnessing or hearing, if you will, the very first episode of what I hope to be a podcast at some point, a vlog. I guess there's 100 different names for these things these days, but a video adventure that I'm going on. And it's called 12NoteDesign. And even though there's no content as of now, because you're seeing and hearing the fledgling flight here of this thing, I hope you'll consider hitting the like button and maybe subscribing to my channel, because my goal is to really bring a lot of the songwriting knowledge that I've gained through the years and see if I can share some of that knowledge. I've always felt like there's a point where you feel like you want to make it, quote unquote. And I think at some point I realized that everybody's made it to some level, and some of those little victories, I think it's a good thing to celebrate those. I do realize that I'm not the most accomplished, but I also realize that I've come a long way. So I'm very hopeful that maybe some of the things that I've learned will be of help to someone else, and that might be you. So the name of my new adventure here is called 12NoteDesign, and the reason for that is the fact that there are 12 notes in an octave. So that's part of what I want to be teaching, is the theory. I kind of came up with a, what do you call it? I forget what you call it whenever you have the letters from each word that make up another word. But listen is my topics that I want to be covering in this podcast. So L is for lyrics, I is for instrumentation, S is for structure, T is for theory, E is for evolution, and N is for network. So just to kind of go through all of those. Lyrics, I'd love to go through. I've probably written 300 or 400 lyrics throughout time here. And I've come to the conclusion that, there's no right and wrong here, but you'll find in Nashville, for example, you want the story to be very specific and tell a story and paint the picture. In sync, you want to be a little bit more generic, because you can't be talking about getting in a red pickup truck and the dust blowing up from as you're spinning out, because your girlfriend just left and you're wearing your white t-shirt. You're not going to get that song played in a song where a guy is unhappy, but he's in New York walking out of his hotel in a three-piece suit. So, but yet if I had told the story of maybe the feelings, the emotions, and so forth, that may have gotten some traction, and that might have been. So both of those are right in their own sense. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about with lyrics. We'll talk about rhyming schemes, some near rhymes, maybe get into some poetry things where iambic pentameter or something we'll talk about. Then also, lyrically, we'll talk about themes that work well for different things and for different emotions. And then talk maybe a little bit about the story that is personal to you, and also the character, or whether there's some concepts that you're trying to get across. The second pillar is instrumentation. So I've been a big fan of playing lots of different instruments. Keyboard is probably the one that I've concentrated on the most and spent the most time with. So we'll be talking about the way a piano is played, the different types of keyboards. You can see here in the background, I got a Fender Rhodes that I recently reacquired from my college days. And then I've got a pull-out desk here. I guess I'm saying things you can see. So some of you will be listening to the podcast and not be able to see this. So I'm going to try to make this as non-need for visual as possible, but nevertheless, I am doing the video recording too. So if you are only listening, maybe you're getting half the story. But the comparisons of different instruments, I'd like to get into a little bit. I play a little bit of acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and each has their place in a song. Sometimes you have room for both. Maybe the solo is on electric guitar, but the rhythm is with acoustic. I like how Boston switched that up quite often, and they had their solos kind of being clean sounding, whereas the rhythm were a little bit of the heavier. I think some fun things to learn about the way instruments are played. So I'll probably do some sessions with that. I think one of the interesting thing was I was playing mandolin a little bit, and I kind of downloaded the charts, and I was at a gig one time playing the little bit that I knew on mandolin, and a fella next to me was basically saying, it's interesting how it's just like upside down for the guitar. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I just hadn't realized that the strings go opposite of what a guitar does. And some of the reason for that, it comes to a theory, is each string on a guitar is a fourth up from the string below it. On a mandolin, it's a fifth up. Well, fifth and fourth, whenever you go back to your 12 notes, those are kind of opposite of each other. So a fourth up is a fifth down at the same time. So that's how it ends up being upside down. And then once I bought a violin, I was like, oh, this is kind of familiar because this is just like a mandolin, And then I realized I bought a cello. And all these instruments, I definitely don't want you to get the impression that I think that I'm accomplished at any of them. But maybe I'll be able to show someone who's starting out, here's how to play some of those. So the stringed instruments, I had some affinity for, and then the keyboard instruments. I have started getting into a few more instruments that are wind instruments. So I bought a saxophone. That was the first one that I got into, and so I'll demonstrate what I can do on that. Then I've gotten a little bit better at. I have a trumpet that, that one's not ready for prime time yet, and I just bought a trombone. I have a clarinet. Native flutes have been kind of fun. This is one that I just got at a secondhand bookstore. So I'll probably go through some of that. My latest instrument even is singing bowls, crystal singing bowls that are used in meditation and healing and so forth. So anyhow, instrumentation is the second pillar that I'll spend some time on at this podcast. And then the next one that I have is structure. And this is going to be maybe analyzing the structure of different songs. I think, the popular music is usually centered around intro, verse, chorus, bridge, and then outro chorus. But what I'd like to do is maybe analyze some songs that use different structures, and then maybe kind of compare maybe different themes of songs. The songs that are more cinematic have builds, and you may go through all different themes that are related, that have a motif that sings through all of it. Or maybe there is some songs, I think I'm trying to think of the song. There's one song that there really is no, there's many songs that there just really is no chorus. And Vanessa Williams' song, maybe I'll do an edit here and pop in, or look down below here and I will have remembered what it is. But that song is one that had no chorus, no defined chorus. The next one is theory, and theory is the one that has been so mind-blowing for me and mind-opening. Once again, so we'll have the keyboard here, and so just to kind of run through a few little things. So the 12 notes, I'm going to start on C, just as a starting point, but the 12 notes are and in an octave, you have the octave note is going up to the next C, and there's a science behind that. That's where the frequency of the note is double what the bass one was. So at some point in time, they decided that dividing this by 12 was the optimum way for the sounds to be divided and to be heard and to blend well together. So a fifth. And actually, the one thing I'll get into is the scales. So the major scale starts on C, for example. It goes C and then a whole step, half step, whole, half. And because of that, I'm playing them all white notes. So that ends up being the easiest key to learn. So it sounds like the do, re, mi. And that's where everything gets started. But once it gets fun, is so this is where you get fifths, and that's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a fifth, a perfect fifth, and the harmony of that just is pleasing. And then the third, with that, and you play those 3 notes, and that makes up a chord. So there's a C chord, and then take those same notes but move the C up an octave. And now you're playing a first inversion, and then there's a third inversion, but then you're back to just playing that same chord an octave up. We'll get into the modes. That's like playing all the white notes, but I'm starting on D. And so suddenly you have this minor feel, this sad, or I like to feel, it feels Renaissance-y to me for some reason. And then there's the Lydian and the Mixolydian, all those different modes. So that's going to be something fun to explore. And we'll get into the circle of fifths at some point and dive deep into that. And if you haven't heard of some of these things, you're in for a treat. I think whenever I learned the relationship of these different modes and scales, it really took my songwriting to the next level because I understood a little bit more of what I was doing. I think one of the things I remember back to that was really frustrating for me was I felt like I learned the scale to play a little bit of solo, and I knew what a major scale and a minor scale were, but I'd be playing songs that really weren't either of those. Like some of the notes in the minor scale just sounded wrong. And that led me to finding the pentatonic scale, which is just a few less notes out of that minor scale that took out the ones that were typically wrong. But then it was really nice to find that I was like, oh, this song is in Dorian. And now when I play that scale, everything sounds good. And that's why playing the minor scale just wasn't quite right. So anyhow, that's the theory. Evolution is our next letter, and the evolution I want to talk about is the evolution of a song, and that's going to be everything from an idea. You're at the grocery store and someone in front of you says something that's like, wow, that would make a fun line. So it starts with a spark of an idea. And that spark then turns into something that you take a little farther, and you come up with a reason that idea, and that might be a title, it might not, it might be the opening line. So maybe it's a lyric thing that starts it off. Other times it might be I sit down with an instrument, piano for example, and maybe I play a chord, and I'm thinking, that's where do I want to go from there? And maybe it's the feel of the song. So in other words, I might start with something that's like that's very ballady, or it might be that I'm like, you just never know where it's going to go. It might be something fast. It might be minor. It might be sad. It might be a seventh. And the mood might be set. So the evolution starts with those sparks. And then for different people, some people have the whole lyric written, and then they bring that and then try to put the music to it. I think of Elton John and Bernie Taupin whenever I think of that. That's that they're kind of come up with separate. For me, more so than not, I'll come up with a melody line and a concept, and then I'll get the whole melody kind of worked out in my head. I love the story about Paul McCartney having scrambled eggs was the line I believe that he had, that he didn't know where it was going, but da 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 da. So he had this, and scrambled eggs was the word that was just fitting. So it gave him the melody, but also the phrasing and the feel that he was trying to get, and then it was finding the word that fit. And it turns out the same number of syllables was yesterday, and history was made, of course. But then moving past that evolution, you kind of get to, do I want this to have verse, chorus, or is this going to be a bunch of verses? So the structure we kind of talked about earlier. You get to the point of trying to decide where that is all going to go. Then maybe you get it to a point where now you can, with your phone or voice memo or whatever, you can play through the whole thing. And it's a complete song at that point. But then it's time to actually produce it. So getting into the production, which is another fun thing we'll do. I use Logic now. I did use Pro Tools to record songs. GarageBand is the free one that's on there. Actually, way back in the day, I had Cakewalk was one of the first ones that I used when it was just a sequencer and recording audio. I'm talking way back now. The audio took up way too much hard drive space to be usable, but now that's not nearly the problem. My first digital audio workstation, DAW as they're called, was a thing called Session 8 from DigiDesign. Had eight tracks to it. But now it's like you can, for a couple $100, get all the tracks that you'll ever need, that has compressors in there. This keyboard I'm playing right now is actually the sound in Logic, and I'm just using this keyboard as a MIDI controller to play those sounds and record them into the system. But is more of the production elements. We might maybe go into how to get a good vocal sound, what mics to use, how to mic a guitar amp, maybe the best way to record a saxophone, and just get to the evolution of the song being recorded. Moving on from that, I guess my last pillar is network, and this is really getting your songs out. And this could be everything from networking on a personal level, meaning playing your song for your network of friends, maybe getting gigs and going out and playing in front of people, getting feedback from your songs, maybe joining some songwriting camps that are online or Zoom or whatever, and getting to the point where you get some feedback on which songs work, what works with them and what doesn't. And then the bigger picture of getting your songs online and maybe going out to even a broader audience. Part of the networking part of this podcast hopes to touch on how to get your songs out into the Spotifys of the world and the Apple Music and Amazon Music, all the different platforms. And personally, I use DistroKid. I historically did use Reverb Nation before that, but we maybe talk through some different ways to, once you have your song recorded into a tangible form like a MP3 or better quality, of course, would be to get a WAV file or an AIF file. But then to get that out onto streaming platforms where you can promote it and get streams, and then we'll talk about the ways to make some money from that too, and getting your music into where it's actually recorded, how many times it's been played, and so forth. And that is through what's called performing rights organizations. The primary ones here in the United States are ASCAP, which I'm a member of, and BMI. There's also a CSAC. I've co-written with some people internationally, so I got a song that's with SOCAN in Canada, and I got one in South Africa, Australia, England. So some co-writers that I've worked with. But anyhow, those are the PROs, and then the other thing that brings in some money that a lot of people don't know about that I might go and do a podcast on is the MLC, and it's the website for that is themlc.com, and that collects kind of more of the mechanical royalties that used to be from selling records, the actual copies of physical records, but now it's a little bit more of downloads, and I think maybe streams, but that's for your publishing rights. And then also with the networking portion, I hope to get into some of the legal things of should you copyright your songs with the Library of Congress, the myths that you can mail a tape to yourself and that's just as good, and the answer to that is no, don't do that. So that's the 12 pillars, and I don't know where this is going to go. Like I said, kind of this is me setting off on a journey of something I've never done before, and I feel like I've got some knowledge to share, but I've got also some knowledge to gain and to learn, and I'm hoping this is going to be a good platform for me to learn myself as well as I go through this. Maybe each time I try to teach how to play a new instrument before I hit record, I will have spent some time myself on some YouTube channels and some practicing and getting better. I hope to maybe turn this into some interviews. I'd like to bring some people on and have some experts maybe be able to help me tell their story, to help me and to help my listeners on their journey of some things to do, things to avoid potentially, and different ways that people have gotten into their songwriting, maybe how they do their craft, how they've exposed their songs to the world and maybe had some success with it. I definitely have been getting a lot of friends through boot camps that are all over the world. The sync world is one thing that I'm heavily pursuing at this point. I've had one song signed to a library that actually does a lot of work with the young and the restless. None of my songs have been placed there yet, but I'm one step closer, so I can talk about that process and the networking involved in the relationships that you need to get into that world. That is a goal of mine personally, is to get my music into film and TV, and one of the major things with that is the production has to be right. So I definitely realize that production is something that I need to work on to get as good as it can be. And hopefully, like I said, all of these things kind of come together. The fact of that you're here this long means that you have some interest in songwriting and putting songs together. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people that aren't in this world of songwriting have no idea how much effort it takes to put a song out. Even to get a song on Spotify, a lot of times I'm done with the song, I've recorded it, I'm all ready to upload it, and the first thing it asks for is what's the album cover? Oh, well, now I got to go and spend a little bit of time maybe getting into Photoshop or finding a picture that I have, doing some graphic design to put the name of the song and my name on it, for example. which it feels sometimes like it has nothing to do with music, but luckily a lot of people that are into songwriting are artistic types, so that's not a hard part of it, but it's a time-consuming part. Every time you have a song that you want to release, it has its own cover, for example, unless you release it as an album and then you just have one album cover. And then, of course, they say to upload your lyrics. Well, now to upload lyrics, that means you got to type them in, and file management gets to be an issue of where you're keeping all this stuff. How will you find it? I think it might blow some people's minds that I've written, on the order of, I wrote it down somewhere, I think 30 songs last year. I think it was just shy of that. It's like 27 or 28. And to some people, that might be a crazy amount of songs. Well, I know that some of the people in this sync world that do this all day long for a living, that they're doing 300, 400 songs, a song a day, a couple songs a day on average. So that blows my mind. There's other people that one and done, that they had an idea for a song and their goal was just to get that one song written. And this isn't really a path that they want to pursue for making lots of songs, and that's fine too. There's not a right and wrong there. I feel like a target of 30 for me is good if I really want them produced and finished. But I do feel like I could write a song every day, but probably not take it to the finish line. To me, it's kind of like with artwork. I feel like a lot of times you can do a quick sketch and get the point across, but if you want something to have a lot of detail in it, and the analogy to music is to be well produced, it takes a little bit more time to do that. To get things finished, that means that there's less of them potentially. But I do feel, even with my journey, the more you dive into your DAW and find the shortcuts to make things happen quicker, the more you realize that you begin to get quicker. You get templates set up. You maybe have some loops that you know where to go to get set the tempo and get your song grooving. There's a lot of other software tools maybe I'll dive into. There's one program that I used way back in the day, and then recently bought it again because it's been improved a little bit. It's called Band in the Box, and it's an interesting program where it's almost like a spreadsheet, and you just put the chords in that you want to play, and it's more like per measure. So you put like it's going to be C for a measure, F for a measure, G for a measure, and C again. And then you select a style and it puts together a whole backing track for you. The bass line is there, the keyboard, a little guitar line, all MIDI is what it used to be, but now they've actually got some live recorded sound in there. And it makes it really interesting to be able to put a song together quickly, to have it recorded, so that you can see where it's going. And the beauty of that is, too, you can export those as tracks, throw them into your DAW, which is your digital audio workstation, and then maybe play over them and replace them all with your real tracks. And you eventually used it as a tool towards songwriting, but then by the time you were done, you really got it all to be your music that you recorded. So there's that software. Today the iPhones or your smartphone, I should say, because everyone's got different brands. There's just so much you could do with that. An iPad, there's everything from programs on there to write and record. Today, I'm using my iPhone for this recording, as far as the video of it. I'm recording into Pro Tools all the sound, using some of the stuff that I bought. This is a CAD Equitech mic that I'm using, that I use for my vocals when I sing on tracks, but I'm using it for this podcast today. And this is probably going to evolve. This is episode 1, hopefully of many to come. But I hope I'm able to get some of the things that are things that people want to learn about, and I hope you will maybe leave some comments of things that you would like to dive into deeper, or maybe even some questions that would be good things for me to address in future episodes. Once again, this is Mark Greenawalt. I'm going to sign off. Kind of keep these to this length here to get started at least. But 12 Note Design, episode 1 in the books, so to speak. Please, if you will, I appreciate any support by hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the podcast, which isn't out there as of this recording, but hopefully this will be episode 1 on that here at some point. Got a little learning curve myself just to figure out even how to do that, but thankfully there's a lot of people like me out there that are sharing the knowledge, and maybe at some point I'll tell you how I did it, and maybe how I improved it moving forward. But for now, I think I'll sign out and say thank you all for taking the time to give this a listen. This is Mark Greenawalt with 12 Note Design. Talk to you in the next episode. Thanks.